Good morning. I'll start off by saying some Sanskrit prayers that are generally recited before speaking positive messages on spirituality and God. Om Jnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachaline Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So the topic I chose for this morning is God a person? Sometimes this topic can make people feel a little uncomfortable. How can something so powerful, something omniscient and omnipresent and all-powerful, controlling the entire universes, be embodied? How is that possible? It's hard for us to imagine something that powerful contained within a form. Because when we think of forms, we think that that form is going to make mistakes. They're definitely not infallible. So when we think of form and personality, we immediately start to think that there's got to be limitations to that form, because we're limited. We're only so tall, right? And we can only think so much. And we can't go without food for too long. We can't go without water for so long. So there are limitations to forms, and that is the idea we have. And so as soon as we think of the divine, we think, well, the divine is so expansive, it can't possibly have a form. And logically, from our logic, that makes sense. But we know our logic can be quite imperfect. And why can our logic be quite imperfect? Because our senses are imperfect. When we look at the sun in the sky, we see a ball that looks like the size of a volleyball or a basketball. If our senses were perfect, we would know that we are like a golf ball in front of something really, really huge. So if our senses were perfect, we'd be able to understand how far it is and how hot it is and how grand it is. But because our senses aren't perfect, we can't make that out. So we come to, if you have imperfect tools, then our conclusions will also be imperfect. So, or sometimes when you're driving through the desert and you see water in the sand, you think, oh, there's water there, but it's actually just a mirage. Our eyes don't fully grasp it. There's so many frequencies that we can't hear, that dogs can hear. So our senses altogether are very imperfect, and our mind is also quite imperfect. At night, we have a nightmare, or if we're starting to dream, we believe that that's happening to us. It's not really happening at all. Especially if it's a nightmare, the mind creates a scenario, puts you into that picture, and makes you believe it's all happening. And then you can wake up scared, and you're sweating, and you're breathing faster, and your heart's beating faster. So our mind even is not perfect because it makes us believe things that aren't really there. It makes us misunderstand people. Sometimes you can communicate with each other, and there could be a little miscommunication. We didn't understand what somebody said, and now our friendship is at risk because we didn't understand, or we misunderstood what something somebody said, and their intention might have been completely different. So the reason I'm mentioning this is to understand that our logic at this moment is not perfect, because all the tools we have to make logical conclusions are also not perfect. So if the tools aren't perfect, then obviously the conclusions can't be perfect. So the idea is to remain open to the possibility. Now, the Vedic or Hindu texts have different understandings of the divine or God. The two basic ones are, one is, the more popular belief within the Hindu tradition is that God is not a person. He's just some expansive energy, all pervasive throughout the universe. There isn't any place that God isn't. And God is also present in all of us. But that is just an energy, it's not in a form. So that's the more popular understanding. There's another school, which is also quite popular, but not as popular as the other one, that suggests that God is a person. And again, this is something a little bit harder for us to wrap our head around. How can the divine be a person? So I'd like to talk about this other school of thought that talks about how God could possibly be a person. So we see that the thing that we all hanker for in our life as human beings and even animals is love. That is the biggest thing that we strive for. That is what we are all looking for, love and happiness. Right? And the greatest happiness comes when we have good, loving relationships. Because there's nothing more satisfying to the soul than loving relationships. So, and we understand also that the ultimate love is the love between the soul and God. The soul is eternal. Right? The soul never dies. The body may die. The body will get old. It'll deteriorate. Eventually it'll vanish. But the soul will continue to live on. Because it doesn't die. The Bhagavad Gita, one of the prominent spiritual texts of India, says the soul cannot be burnt by fire. It cannot be moistened by water. It cannot be withered by the wind. It cannot be cut by any weapon. It is indestructible and it's eternally youthful. The soul never gets old. Time is not able to age the soul. So the soul is eternal and the divine or God is eternal. So that is, you can see, where true love can take place between two eternal beings. The love in this world is also there and it's wonderful, but we know it's temporary. And at some point, the people we love will move away from us in some capacity or another. But the love that the soul has for God is eternal. Now, if we're looking for true love, and we're all looking for that true love, and ultimately we're looking to develop a love for God, for the divine. Now, if the divine wasn't a person, how could we really love the divine? Right? We love people. We don't really love things. Things facilitate our life, so we appreciate them. But we can't love our phone because it can't love us back. You might say, oh, I love my phone. I don't think so. You can appreciate the convenience it's providing, but you can't love it because if you're in trouble, your phone's not going to come help you. Siri is not just going to call the doctor for you. Say, oh, are you okay, Jack? Let me call the doctor. Can I get you some water or something? No, it can't do anything for you, right? So that means love means it requires reciprocation, right? And it requires service. So when I love someone, they'll probably love me back. Hopefully, right? That's reciprocal. That's love. When two people actually not just love, but also serve one another. That is actually love. If it's a one-way street, then that's not love. Now, if we're truly trying to develop love of God, how can we love something that's not a person? Because how can it reciprocate with us? Like all the things we do in our love, we serve and we care and we embrace, right? We're there for each other. All of these things can also be done with that supreme being, with the divine. And if that divine doesn't have a form and doesn't love us back, like actually love us back, how can we really love? Right? The experience of love wouldn't really be there. So, and ultimately, after this life ceases to exist, what's waiting for us? What is there waiting for us? It's scary to think that there's nothing waiting for us. It seems very much like a void. But it's explained, right, in some of the spiritual texts that the supreme being will be waiting for us at that moment if we've dedicated our life to attempting to love the supreme and attempting to develop that relationship with the supreme. God will actually be waiting for us in that moment. And there's some texts that explain that when we finally leave this world behind and go back to the spiritual realm, that God is there, He's waiting to embrace us. And it's explained that as soon as we see God, we faint because God is so beautiful. And not just that, but it's also explained that when God sees us, who's also described as being eternally youthful, So according to the Bhagavad Gita, we call God Krishna, which means all attractive. God is also youthful. Because when God sees us, he also faints. Can you imagine making God faint? Huh? That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? So it's a reciprocal thing. It's not just that we, have experienced ecstasy in God. God experiences ecstasy seeing us come back to him. And then it's explained, then when both come out of their unconscious state, then they embrace each other. The one who's finally liberated themselves from this material world. And then they both embrace each other, and then they begin crying. And in those tears, again, they both lose consciousness. They're so happy to see each other. So this is really, when I studied this, it really captured my attention. I was thinking, yes, it makes sense that God has to be a person. And if you're very uncomfortable with that idea, then God can also be without a form. But really think about it. In order to love, we need a person there who can reciprocate with us, who can understand us and be there for us. And that shouldn't end when this body ends. Right? When this life ends, and when we go back to the spiritual realm, or heaven, or whatever you want to call it, how can we be devoid of personal relationships? Without personal relationships, life is so dull and depressing and boring. That's one reason we all come together in a community, in a spiritual environment, so we can be with each other. Otherwise, why not just have everybody Skype in? Could do that, it's easier. But we're here because we want to be with each other. Otherwise, again, what is the point of life if we can't be with other people that care for us? And it's explained the spiritual world, where God is a person, but it's interesting because there's unlimited individuals in the spiritual world, and nobody feels neglected by God. Because God is so powerful that he can allow everyone simultaneously to experience his presence. Just like if we all go outside, we will all simultaneously experience the heat and light of the sun. Right? If we're all standing in the same space, we'll all feel it equally. It's not like, the sun's neglecting me and this person's getting more sunlight. So same thing, God has that power of making us all feel that we are getting his undivided attention. And we have the ability to feel that even now. So it's not that God is just in a far distant location. God is present everywhere. All we have to do is take time to really experience him. Like this beautiful song, The Face of God. It's interesting, the face of God. Why are we even thinking about it or singing about it? If deep down inside we feel God's not a person, why not call it the faceless God? But something inside of us is telling us that what must God look like? We're asking ourselves, what must God look like? What are God's qualities? So it's explained God not only has a form, and that form is eternally youthful, and God has unlimited qualities and unlimited beauty. And every tradition has a name for God. Some call him Allah, all-powerful, Yahweh, Jehovah, Krishna, Ram, Vishnu. There's so many names. So why name something that's formless? Right? So in so many ways, when we get on our knees and when we pray to God, I think we feel that someone up there did actually answer the phone. Right? We feel that someone answered the phone. Maybe I can't hear what they're saying. Maybe my connection isn't so clear. Maybe I don't really want to hear. Maybe it's enough for me to know that they've answered the phone. And they're trying to speak. God's trying to speak, but maybe we're not ready to hear it fully yet. And how do we become ready to hear the message of God in our life? It's when we are able to remove things like envy and greed and pride and hatred from our heart. Envy meaning we are bothered when we see other people succeed. When we see others accomplish things, greater things than we've accomplished. Generally, that bothers us a little. We compare ourselves to everyone. Oh, I could have done that. I have the talent to do that, but how did they get the opportunity? God gave them the opportunity. That's it. And we have to be okay with that. Otherwise, we're questioning God's judgment. If it was meant to be mine, it would have been mine. If it wasn't meant to be mine, there's nothing I could have done to make it mine. So, envy, once we get rid of comparing ourselves to everyone else and just being grateful for what we've been given. Pride, thinking ourselves better than others, looking down upon others, speaking to others in a condescending tone because we think we're better, we're smarter, or we have more money, or we have better status in society. All of these things prevent us from hearing God's message when we pray. God may be speaking to us, but these are all static that's preventing us from hearing the message. Or hatred and anger. People hating each other because of their skin color is different, or their religion is different, or their belief system is different. Wow, I can't imagine how much pain we cause God seeing that his children are fighting over who's right and who's wrong. So when we are able to get rid of all of these what's called anarthas or unwanted things in the heart, then we will actually generally be able to hear the message of God when we get on our knees and pray. And when we are able to cleanse our heart of all of these things, when we breathe our last breath, at that time, when we leave this body, when the soul leaves the body behind, at that moment we'll be able to see actually God face to face. So unless our eyes are clear and our heart and mind are cleansed, through serving one another, through studying the scripture, and through spiritual practice, we won't really have that full access to the divine, and we won't be able to really understand that God is a person who's waiting to love us and reciprocate with us. There's in the Bhagavad Gita, which means the song of God, so God sings, by the way, so don't be surprised if you get there and he's singing a song to you. Don't be totally surprised. God's an expert. So the Bhagavad Gita explains that the God's an expert poet, he's an expert singer, and he's an expert dancer. Okay? So it's really a dance party with God. But you really have to be qualified to get up there. They will check your ID. Right? So, but in the Bhagavad Gita it's explained, and some of the other Hindu texts, that God enjoys serving us more than we enjoy serving him. Or more than he enjoys being served. He enjoys serving us. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, also the Supreme Being, known as the Supreme Being, is driving around the chariot of Arjuna. He's not sitting in the back, he's driving Arjuna's chariot. He's serving his friend and his devotee. And I explain, so God gets great pleasure out of serving. More than just being served. And I think we can all experience this. Like whenever we've taken the time to do some selfless service for someone, it brings us great joy in our heart, doesn't it? More than anything else. Especially if someone's in need and you go out of your way, sacrifice your time and energy, money, whatever it may be, to serve someone, there's a satisfaction that you get that you can't get from buying anything new or doing anything else. So where is that tendency to serve others coming from? It's coming from God. Because God is the supreme servant, actually. If we get a little joy from serving, imagine how much joy God is getting from serving so many people constantly. So I want to leave us with this message, with this reflection, and with this meditation. That is it possible that God is a person? And would we want to be able to, at the time of our departure from this body, be able to actually see the face of God and get that warm, loving embrace from God? So let's just think about that for a moment. Think about that right now. For 1 second, just go ahead and close your eyes and just imagine and visualize yourself getting a warm embrace from God at the last moment of your life. And that warm embrace will be with us eternally once we achieve that spiritual realm. Thank you very much.